In this week's EV news, Hertz pauses plans to buy more EVs from Polestar. Morrisons and MFG announce a partnership that could transform EV charging at their stores. British EV startup Forseven aims to rival Bentley, Rolls-Royce and Jaguar. And Norway saw 4,717 new EVs registered in January. Welcome back to another EV News, where I bring you a selection of the EV-related news stories that have caught my eye from the UK and beyond. We're a little bit out of sync on the old upload schedule at the moment, so you're probably now going to see sort of 3 of these videos in quick succession so we can get caught back up, and hopefully then we'll go back to bringing you one every week. For those of you wondering where the Maxus T90 EV videos are, it isn't here yet. It should be delivered next week, hopefully, so I'll be able to bring you some first impressions of possibly the worst pickup truck ever made. I gather over 900 of them have been sold on these super cheap of £100 a month or even less lease deals, so it's taken quite a while for the lease companies and the dealerships to actually organise getting them all out to everybody, and that's why it's dragging on a little bit. Some of the deliveries are making their way to people, but mine is going to take a little bit longer. But hopefully we'll have some news for you fairly shortly. But without further ado, let's get into the news, shall we? First up, Hertz have paused plans to buy more EVs from Polestar in 2024. After a collapse in residual values last year caused the rental giant to taper its electric ambitions. In 2022, Hertz agreed to buy 65,000 Polestar cars over 5 years in a deal likely worth around $3 billion. And this was part of its ambition for EVs to make up a quarter of its rental fleet by the end of 2024. It also struck a deal to buy 100,000 Teslas at around the same time. Late last year, Hertz announced that the higher than expected repair costs were causing the Tesla fleet to be less cost effective than they were hoping it was going to be, and they were going to start reducing the number of Teslas on their fleet as a result, and that it wouldn't meet that 25% target by the end of 2024. Polestar's chief executive Thomas Ingenlath told the Financial Times that he'd been contacted by Hertz chief executive Stephen Scher last autumn to ask whether they could pause that agreement to buy a certain number of EVs throughout 2024. Some car rental groups take their cars on a buyback model where they have an underwritten value for the sort of residuals on the car based on the fact the manufacturer is going to buy it back off them after a certain amount of time or a certain number of miles. But Hertz, on the whole, don't do this with their fleet. This was news to me. I didn't actually realise this till I saw this article in the Financial Times. They operate an at-risk model where they buy the vehicles outright and then take full responsibility for the residual value further down the road. So if the residuals are worse than expected, they're taking the full brunt of that. Polestar have agreed to waive Hertz's requirement to buy an allotted number of cars this coming year. But in return, what they've said is they need to agree not to sell its current Polestar models early or too cheaply. Now, I can see why they would do that. A premature glut of cars onto the used market would smash residuals to bits. I mean, I think you only need to look at like some Renault Zoe values. When Onto went bust and all those cars flooded onto the market, values took a massive dip because there was suddenly a massive rush of supply earlier than expected. It's a bit of an odd one this though, because I'm not sure that low residuals are all that's really at play here with Hertz. I mean, as you know, if you're a regular viewer, I rented a Polestar 2 from Hertz back in November. I'm actually driving one right now as well. I'm up in Scotland at the moment. As you probably noticed, we're not in the usual location. And I rented a Polestar 2 to do that as well because the Maxus isn't here yet. And it was impossibly cheap when I did John O'Groats to Land's End at £16 a day. And this time I've got one for a week for £18 a day. There's absolutely no way that Hertz are making any money on that. £16 a day, £18 a day to drive around in that £50,000 car that it seems that they own outright, they don't have a guaranteed sort of future value for. Why are they offering them these such cheap rates, do you think? And don't get me wrong, I'm very, very happy to take advantage of that. I mean, they're great cars to drive, and to be able to drive one for, I mean, God, less than what some people probably pay for insurance is unbelievable. I suspect that customer reluctance is the real issue at the heart of this. And Hertz don't do themselves any favours with that. So the refuelling policy, for example, you need to take it back with at least 80%. Or they will charge you £1.27 per kilowatt hour to fill it up. So they use exactly the same punitive fueling policy they use with petrol or diesel, where If you don't fill your tank, when you don't take it back to the full tank, they'll fill it up and they'll charge you like £2, £2.50, £3 a litre to penalise you for them having to go out of their way to do that. And they're just copying that with EVs, but that is bound to make things more difficult for people. They are not going to be as willing to rent an EV if it means they're going to have to faff around trying to find somewhere to charge it near the airport, for example. And people are still reluctant to drive an EV in situations where they would rent a car. If you're in a foreign country or even at home but you need something a bit bigger, a bit different to usual, maybe you want not to have to think about things like, oh, it needs to go back with 100% charge, and you just want to drive it. It's easy to fill up and return. And the public infrastructure rollout, right, has an awful lot to do with that. And I do think that is one of the big reasons why Hertz are seeing that the electric rental fleet isn't as popular as they thought it was going to be. Now, I absolutely love renting a Polestar from Hertz. I think as long as you're reasonably familiar with how the charging networks work and all that kind of stuff, it's nice and easy. But they give you very little support in how to find chargers, how to charge it, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the one I've got this time didn't even come with the Hertz Shell Recharge charging fob, which is what they want to be the primary way that you charge it. Didn't even come with that, so you're kind of on your own. Now, it's no problem to me, I've got a brace of charging cards, but if you're new to EVs, you're not going to have, and therefore you're going to be wondering how you even charge the thing. And so you're actually quite likely to just say, well, sod it, just give me a petrol or diesel car. And I do wonder if that's really what's at the heart of this, and that's why we're seeing these crazy rates here in the UK. Because surely, if residuals are what they're worried about, it'd be better for them to not rent them out for crazy low, keep the mileage off them, and then they'll be worth more when they come to sell them. Because there's no way they're making up for wear and tear and stuff at such a low price, but I don't know. But you would hope that Hertz weren't stupid enough to place these big orders for these EVs based on the crazy residual values we saw in 2020 and 2021, where cars were not depreciating at all, and in fact, in some cases, they were increasing in value. If some analyst somewhere has decided that that is what an EV residual curve looks like, and then is now shocked that it's crashing, well, I wouldn't want them running my business. Next up, Morrisons becomes the latest supermarket to get serious about EV charging. Sort of. MFG, Motor Fuel Group, has agreed a deal to buy 337 petrol forecourts for Morrisons and more than 400 associated sites that could be used for EV charging to develop ultra-rapid charging hubs in a deal worth £2.5 billion. Morrisons, I think you'll all agree, have had a pretty woeful entry into EV charging. You have this partnership with Genie Point, where basically Genie Point have dumped some scrap at a handful of Morrisons stores. You'll find a single rapid charger that never works when you need it to, and I mean, they've got quite a reputation for it. I don't think I've ever successfully managed to charge a car at a Morrisons store as a result. MFG, on the other hand, very serious about charging. Refreshingly so for a business whose roots are in fuel retail. They're rolling out ultra-rapid charging in a proper fashion at loads of their sites. Proper charging hubs with 6, 8, 12 chargers in strategic locations exactly where you need them. Absolutely no messing around. As part of the acquisition, Morrisons will take a minority stake of around 20% in MFG and enter into commercial and supply agreements with the company. So presumably, we'll see Morrisons products, produce, etc. being sold in all of MFG's sites, you would like to think. MFG is aiming to install 800 rapid chargers in hubs within the first 5 years of this partnership, making it one of the largest ultra-rapid charging operators in the UK, with more than 1,300 sites in total. As I say, they are absolutely killing it. People don't talk about MFG very often, they're just sort of quietly getting on with it, but they're becoming a huge player in ultra-rapid charging. This is very big news for the entire supermarket charging landscape. With the news out at Sainsbury's the other week there, things are getting very interesting indeed, and I think we're on the edge of them all actually wanting to compete with each other on this as a service, and hopefully that's what we're going to see going forward. Now then, it is used bargain of the week time. In this section I find something from Auto Trader that's electric powered and usually heavily depreciated. Those are the only real requirements. How about the cheapest Hyundai Ioniq 5 that I've ever seen? I've been looking at these on and off since being reminded they existed after seeing one on the road the other day. I absolutely love how they look, very striking, and Some of the owner reviews of them are a little bit mixed though. I see one or two people that are actually really quite dissatisfied. One guy in particular, I see talking about his on Twitter a lot, has actually sold it and bought a Polestar 2 instead because he really wasn't happy with it at all. So take that as you will. I'm not sure what they're actually like to live with. It doesn't sound like they're necessarily as good as they look. £23,399 for this example that has only covered 6,950 miles seems very, very cheap indeed. Even if it is the smaller 58 kWh battery and the SE Connect trim, which is a little bit down the ladder. I'm not sure about it in black though. I think if you're going to buy an Ioniq 5, you want one of the more sort of standout colour combinations, these sort of matte colours and stuff. Black doesn't quite cut it for me, but it's a nice looking car, no doubt about that. You'd need a few grand more if you wanted the 73 kWh battery, and even more so if you want the ultimate trim, which obviously is the range topper, is what most people would be holding out for. EV Database reckons the range of that smaller battery is 155 to 210 miles. That's sort of coupled with that 800 volt system for ultra rapid charging. Well, maybe you don't need the bigger battery if it charges that quickly. As long as where you're going to be driving it is in places where you're going to find sort of 350 kilowatt chargers, you probably don't need to worry too much about range. But let me know what you think in the comments. Would you hold out for the bigger battery version? Would you spend a couple of grand more to make sure you had that? Or would the 58 kilowatt hour one be a bit of a bargain buy and actually you'd be able to live with it? Next up, British EV startup Forseven aims to rival Bentley, Rolls-Royce and Jaguar. The new company is being bankrolled by investment company CYVN Holdings, owned by the Abu Dhabi government, which also has an interest in Chinese EV brand NIO, and Gordon Murray Technologies, part of the Gordon Murray Group, that is launching the T50 and T33 supercars. Gordon Murray Technologies has pioneered the iStream platform and production technology, which is expected to be used as part of the Forseven lineup. iStream promises low weight and high strength, with the battery part of the overall structure of the vehicle and the use of recycled carbon fibre body panels to lower the carbon footprint of the manufacturing. Former JLR Executive Director of Vehicle Programmes Nick Collins has joined Forseven as CEO after leaving the British luxury car maker in December, and it seems he joins other JLR staff in the engineering and design teams. Of course, it's far too early to know more about the cars themselves. More information is expected later in 2024, but they do seem to be planning an unremitting focus on luxury, likely pitting them against the reborn all-electric Jaguar lineup that's expected to launch in 2025, as well as the electrified models from Rolls-Royce and Bentley. So not particularly relevant to most viewers of this channel, I'm sure, but it's always good to keep abreast of what's coming in terms of these new EV companies that are popping up, because it's all very interesting indeed. And finally, Norway saw 4,717 new electric cars registered in January 2024. Electric cars accounted for 92.1% of all new car registrations in Norway in January. The most popular new car was, well, rather unsurprisingly, the Tesla Model Y, with 962 units sold, and the next closest, the Hyundai Kona, with 282. 4,717 new EVs is almost 4 times as many as in the same month last year. But January 2023 was a particularly slow month for car sales in Norway, so it's not a big surprise. The 4,717 new EVs were joined by 94 plug-in hybrids, meaning the share of cars with a plug, or electrified, or however you want to put it, is 94% of all passenger cars sold. I know it's of little relevance to the majority of the viewers of this channel who are based in the UK, but I find it really, really interesting to keep tabs on EV sales in other countries. Norway, of course, being the perfect example and the poster child for EV adoption because the market share is so incredibly high. It shows pretty well, I think, how much more there is to do here in the UK. You can't tell me that EVs don't work in cold weather and there'd be no use in a British winter if they're this popular to this extent in a country that is significantly colder for a lot more of the time. But that is it for this week's EV news. Make sure you let me know what you think about any or all of these stories in the comments, because the feedback from you is always quite interesting. Make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on the next one, and I'd really appreciate it if you click the like button on this video as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.